I would like to call a meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I could just ask everyone to remain standing for a moment. I would like to ask for a moment of silence for several reasons. Obviously, today is the 9/11 anniversary. We held our annual ceremony at the fire station, which was always very powerful and important. I would also like us to remember the Hartford police officer, Bobby Garton, who died in the line of duty on September 6th. And we send our thoughts and prayers to him, his family, and Officer Brian Kearney, who was seriously injured in the line of duty. I also would like us to remember firefighter Anthony Desmond, who was a member of the North Haven Fire Department, and he passed away in late August after completing his shift. And last but not least, Fairfield's sister city in Ukraine suffered one of the worst attacks from a Russian missile, and it struck a market, killing at least 17 people, including a child, and injuring 32 others. Thank you. A more positive and happy note, I would like to present here. Do it right here, I guess. I don't know. Julie, would you like to stand up? Sure. Okay. I would like to present a proclamation to our senior center because it is National Senior Center Month in September. It is a time to showcase older Americans who are significant members of our society, investing in their wisdom and experience to help enrich and strengthen our community. The theme of this year's National Senior Center Month is Strengthening Community Connections. The Bigelow Center for Senior Activities is a vibrant home away from home that is a catalyst in mobilizing creativity, energy, vitality, and a commitment to older adults in Fairfield, which has been designated age-friendly community. Very due in part to Julie and Brenda's hard work. The Bigelow Center provides a wide array of quality services, programs that promote a healthy lifestyle, support independence, and encourage involvement in our community. From the informative and engaging classes to exercise programs, games, movie, day trips, assistance with income tax preparation, Social Security, Medicare issues, and a number of other fun and educational activities, the Bigelow Center empowers older adults in our community to enhance their productivity, well-being, and overall quality of life. In order to communicate effectively with its members, the Bigelow Center issues a comprehensive monthly newsletter, the Senior Times, that provides helpful information and a calendar of events. And whereas the success of the Bigelow Center is attributed to the Human and Social Services Director, Julie DeMarco, and Bigelow Center Director, Brenda Steele, for all your hardworking staff and your dedicated volunteers, including the Friends of the Bigelow Center and the Human Services Commission. So therefore, I, Brenda Kupchik, First Selectman of the Town of Fairfield, do hereby proclaim the month of September as Bigelow Senior Center Month in the Town of Fairfield.
Very much. That's very exciting.
I do say that I got to stop by the new member coffee after the 9/11 ceremony today, and it was really nice to see a lot of new, because I know it's hard for seniors to, kind of break out of their routine. I tried to get my mother down there. She went a few times. She was like, yeah, I'm not having any of that. But I think it was really nice to see new people. And actually there were like 2 new people, members who were not from Fairfield. They moved here because their children live here. And one came from Arkansas. And she said she was like really impressed with Fairfield. And so it was just really nice to see not just people who built the town are able to stay here, but new people coming in to enjoy our community. So good for you for having that welcoming coffee, and it really is a warm and welcoming place. So
Thank you. Yes, thanks for this, everybody. This was good.
thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, if I may,
Yeah, of course.
thank you both for what you do at being at a place where I have older adults for parents. You know, I recognize and value the significance of what you've done. And in some ways now, having served in political office for 6 years, I really believe that the impact that you're having outside of the political arena really is something that makes a significant contribution and difference. And I hope that you take time to feel really proud of what you've done, because I really think it's what moves the needle of a community and makes a huge difference to make older adults feel welcome. And you're both really just incredible stewards for that program and that place, and up for the programs that happen there and the center. And I just want to thank you. And I think the community is really lucky to have you, to have this center, and, you know, keep on keeping on, because it's so important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, for everything you do.
It's our pleasure.
Congratulations, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye, Brenda. All right, item number 4. We are going to, can I get a motion to rescind the following previously adopted motion of appointing Paul Foley to the FairTV Commission? It was approved by the Board of Selectmen at our June 19th meeting. Unfortunately, Paul is withdrawing his candidacy due to an illness. So if I could just get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the board?
Just to wish him well in whatever he's got going on, and, you know, best of luck.
Any comment from the public? Seeing none. Back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our minutes, item number 5, to consider and act upon the minutes of August 7th, 2023 and August 21st, 2023.
So moved.
I'll second it.
I'll open up for the board for discussion. Jenny? I just want to mention, because I think it's important, to discuss the recording of the meeting minutes. Nancy, you had requested that specific questions and things be included in the minutes, and I just want it to be clear that Robert's Rules of Order clearly outline what minutes should reflect. In addition to that, the town now requires all our meetings to be recorded. So per the Robert's Rules of Order, which are universal and apply to all meetings, I just want to point out that not only is it not necessary to summarize matters discussed at a meeting in the minutes of that meeting, it's basically improper to do so. Minutes are a record of what was done at a meeting, not a record of what was said. Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised 11th edition, page 468, section 2, lines 16 through 18. It is supposed to be neutral summary of what happened at the meeting. So I just want to say that we accommodated your request in this time, but I just want to, for the record, and make it known that it's just not proper to do it that way. It's supposed to just list the names, who's there, date, time, place, members present, motions made, votes, and basically that's it. There isn't supposed to be a whole bunch of things, and this has happened before. When I was on the Board of Ed, we would spend hours arguing over the people. I wouldn't, but other people would argue about minutes, and what should be included in minutes and what the person said, and if the minutes were, it wasn't what the minutes were. And so I just wanted to point that out because I want us to make sure that we are following Robert's Rules of Order. And so,
And I appreciate the accommodation. It stems from having some of my comments in the past being taken out of context and without proper context. It's been complicated to convey because not everybody is going back and listening, and I appreciate what you're saying, and moving forward, I hope that what does appear in the minutes for the next body that serves, that it does sort of adhere to that neutrality and just is a real representation. And this is no disrespect to the transcriber, because, you know, Prue, you have always sort of accommodated when we've needed it. So for the clarification, so it's not in what been absent. It's just more that my commentary had been taken out of context. So moving forward, if there is just an adherence to that across the board, I think that's helpful for everybody. I guess there is some gray area of what is considered neutral, but I leave that to the next body to, and for the remaining time that we have to figure that. But thank you for accommodating this time.
Of course. If there's no further comment from the body, is there any comment from the public? Seeing none. Back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Our next item is item number 6. May I have a motion to hear and consider and authorize the purchasing authority to enter a contract of Antonazzi Associates to provide all architectural and engineering services necessary to perform phase 1 preparation of schematic design of the police department rehab projects 1 through 5 as detailed in RFP 2023-144 in the amount not to exceed $45,700. Funding for this contract is available through the account number listed in the agenda. This is the police department headquarters rehab. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have Adam. Thank you, Adam, our purchasing director. Just, bless you. Excuse me. And Adam, just want to, for Attorney Baldwin, I know was coming back on a flight from over the weekend wedding, but he said he wanted me just to say that he did review he improved this contract. And so there you go, Adam.
Yeah, basically, we put out an RFP to firms that were on the town's on-call list, architects and engineers. We received 4 responses. We put together a review committee that included Lieutenant Ferris, myself, and my assistant director, Leaf Flaherty, and James Ryan from facilities, and brought each of those 4 firms in for an interview. During that process, it became clear that we had a number one firm that was Antonazzi Associates. On August 14th, the purchasing authority, made a recommendation for award to Antonazzi. Today, before you, I'm asking for approval of a pretty standard AIA contract to get things moving. We're looking, for the start here, this contract includes 5 potential projects that they're looking to have done at the police station. This particular contract will be for schematic designs, cost estimates for all 5 of those projects. So that moving forward, it's been made clear to Antonazzi we want to sort of streamline. It's also important to get real price estimates for each of the 5 projects. So I kind of said that correctly. There's a priority on getting to project 1, but then we want pricing for all 5 that we can really count on. Have any questions?
Thank you, Adam. I'll open up to the board.
So Attorney Baldwin has approved this contract. You've basically just outlined the fact that it went through the appropriate process.
Yeah, so we have an on-call list that was previously vetted through an RFQ in 2022. So yeah, we reached out to firms that were on that list. Got proposals from them, yeah.
And now, because this is just part of a bigger project, the funding is there, but were there any surprises in the cost of this element of the funding? In other words, I don't want to hear later on that we're over budget because this one was 15-20 grand more than we thought this element was going to be.
Well, really, I think the way that we've decided to move forward with this is to avoid that. We want to get pricing, we want to get legitimate cost estimates for each of the 5 projects.
Yeah.
Or moving forward. I know a certain amount of money has been allotted from maybe ARPA funds. So we're just sort of taking a small chunk of that to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, but overall, you guys put aside some funds, said we think it's gonna cost this for this element. Is this within line with what you thought it was gonna cost? Are we surprised that this element of the project costs this much money?
No.
Okay. I've got nothing further on this one.
I don't either.
Thank you, Adam. Is there any comment from the public on this item? Back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
See you guys. Bye, Jean.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, James. Our next item, is Jim Went and Emma Line. This is, to hear and discuss the draft plan of conservation and development. This item, as I discussed it in the past, and this has been going on for 4 years now, Jim?
More or less, yes.
There were some very robust meetings, just to give sort of a, before Jim comes up, just to give a timeline here. This sort of started in 2017, and the first public engagement was staffing at a booth at October 18th Harvest Festival, July 18th Sea Level Rise Workshop, joint EDC and TPZ Transit Orientated Study. It should be noted that at that time, the Planning and Department engaged with the Economic Development Commission on an opportunity for the Transit Orientated Development Study. They engaged services of Goody Clancy, held a number of public workshops on 6/26/18, 9/26/18, 10/30/18, and 2/7/19. The TOD study was ultimately adopted October of 2019 and forms the basis of many of the recommendations regarding the transit-oriented development in the Metro Center and downtown areas. In April of 19, a housing discussion with the senior advocates happened. January and February of 2020, they held 3 townwide POCD workshops. I attended one of them. It was widely attended. I was actually really impressed by how many people did go. March 20, we had COVID, and then emerging from the pandemic, they engaged in services with a consultant in March of 22. A TP&Z meeting in June of 2022 to discuss the overarching goals. TP&Z meeting with the FECB, July 22, to discuss matters of resiliency. And then virtual workshop survey was launched in September of 2022. And then a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Commission to discuss survey feedback and strategies around housing. And then the TP&Z meeting on 2/13/23, where the draft plan structure was discussed. And then April 20th, Jim and Emmeline held a POCD open house in which the plan structure was presented to the public again, with stations to discuss and vote on the proposed strategy. And the POCD draft plan dated July 2023, distributed to TP&Z and Board of Selectmen first. And it was posted for public comment on 8/15. And I will.
We are going to, Emmeline is going to start with a brief PowerPoint.
Yeah, okay.
Take some of my remarks out that I don't need to make, but I will follow.
I'm trying to help you out,
No,
Jim.
I appreciate that. I will have some remarks after Emmeline's presentation, and then obviously we can open it up for any comments.
Thank you.
Selectwoman. So we just want to give a high-level overview of why we do the plan of conservation and development, how we've kind of come to the present draft. The POCD is required by state statute, and since the original, well, the last comprehensive draft was redone in 2000, there were amendments that were added to that draft in 2016. The state statute now does require a sewer service map area. Also requires that we target development areas within areas that have existing infrastructure, that we focus on mixed use and TOD identification. which is particularly meaningful for Fairfield with 3 train stations. That we mention agricultural protection and preservation. Because we are a Long Island Sound adjacent community, we do need to take into consideration sea level rise. We also have to focus on housing for our aging populations, and then also some discussion of technology infrastructure. In terms of the process for the POCD, since 2000, it is fairly commonplace to post information on town websites, which is what required by state statute. There's also an increase in the regional COG review time. We do need to present the plan, the draft plan to you, although no action is required by the Board of Selectmen. And then just to note, since the plan was last comprehensively adopted in 2000, our ability to apply for discretionary grant funding is linked to an updated plan every 10 years. So we did look at quite a few different documents that have been completed for the town. We don't create the POCD in a vacuum.
Slide to not.
Oh, there it goes.
A little delayed.
It's a little slow.
Sorry.
Sorry. So, you know, going back to 2013, the 2016 update included elements of the bike ped master plan. It also included MetroCog comprehensive planning information, such as updated demographics. And then was, that revision was adopted in 2017. Since then, there's been an economic development planning document that's been updated. There's been a regional framework for coastal resilience. We've also done planning for green infrastructure in downtown. The transit-oriented development study that the first select woman mentioned was a very big part of what we hope will be the updated POCD. In part because we do recognize that, you know, this is a priority development area. And then there's also additional plans such as the sustainability plan, the strategic plan that was completed, the recently adopted affordable housing plan, and the parks and recreation plan. And the photos on the right just reinforce that we have actually gone and done a lot of public outreach as we've discussed some of what we think should be included as some of the goals and priorities, including those focus workshops that we did at Sacred Heart and Penfield Pavilion and Fairfield U. And then also our follow-up virtual workshop that was done after the pandemic, just to check in with our local Fairfielders to make sure that the pandemic hadn't changed some of their priorities. So looking forward for the next 10 years, and I think the slide will catch up in just a second. So what we are hoping in terms of expressing the vision statements and goals for the plan is that our community members agree that Fairfield moving forward will be a resilient community, an environmentally rooted community, a community that is home for all, a sustainably prosperous community, an interconnected community, and a community where people come together. And I'm just going to go over some of these sections rather quickly. Per state statute, again, we are required to look at sea level rise and how Fairfield can best prepare to manage some of what we understand will be coming in terms of future sea level rise. So a resilient community gives the background for how we understand sea level rise, and then also summarizes some of the community engagement that we've done over time. We're really looking to focus on how we create more resilient neighborhoods, how those neighborhoods are connected by resilient hubs and corridors, and then how we focus on both individual hazard mitigation as well as coordinated hazard mitigation. And because of, I think, some of the more recent storm activity that we've seen, especially in our riverine areas, we are looking to downzone some of the density in strategic locations within the Rooster River corridor. For an environmentally rooted community, and again, I apologize, the slides, slight delay. Similarly, we provide some technical background as to those items that we want to focus on, how we engaged in talking to the community about what we focus on in terms of some of the goals and policies that we want to focus on within this section, including expanded greenways. This was a significant part of the discussion in terms of pollinator pathways, how we best look to maintain and enhance our existing open space assets, how we protect beaches and coastal resources. And there are a couple specific projects that have been targeted for that. And then how, in conjunction with the action plan for a sustainable Fairfield, we move forward with initiatives that are identified within that plan. In terms of a community that is home for all, this section, we particularly worked with the Affordable Housing Committee in trying to also mirror some of what their priorities were within the Affordable Housing Plan that was adopted in 2022. This includes promoting more mixed-use opportunities, specifically focused within the town's commercial corridors and also within the Metro North area and Metro Center. And then also, in response to, I think, folks having concern about larger developments, wanting to look at whether there are missing middle housing opportunities. And missing middle is kind of defined as those lower scale developments between 2 and for us, 4 units. And so we are looking at perhaps upzoning 2 small areas in town, and then also looking at whether or not our lot size requirements reflect where you can actually viably develop middle housing. And then also per statute, as required, we are looking to promote housing near transit facilities. Then for a sustainably prosperous community, this really focuses on where we might be able to target additional economic development. And the maps included do really kind of focus this development both in downtown and at the Metro Center train station. However, we did as a couple of items to maybe think about for the future, identify both the bus depot area up by the former GE Sacred Heart West, which is now not being used for transit activities, that maybe that could be a small pocket village commercial area. So we're discussing that with our board as well, and that was something that people responded positively to within our public workshops that we held, as well as an office overlay for home-based businesses. One of the things that we still get inquiries about in town is whether or not folks can do ground floor office and live above. So we're looking into whether or not our commission agrees with hoping to do that within our commercial corridor areas. Of course, the former Exide site as well as Fairfield Metro are 2 target locations. We're also looking at our design commercial district to see whether or not we can revise some of our parking standards. I think most folks identified with the overparking that was at the current Floor and Decor site as well as the Aldi site, as well as some of the larger parking lots that largely remain vacant. The other thing that this section does is it does cross-reference to the other sections. What we've found, of course, is that when we look to diversify housing, we're really looking to do that in our commercial corridors. I think Fairfielders have spoken loud and clear that they would like their single-family residential neighborhoods to stay the way they are. And so we recognize that, and we're grateful that people celebrate their neighborhoods so much. And so again, we're really focusing in our commercial corridors for most of the economic development strategies. For an interconnected community, this touches a bit on the multimodal opportunities within town. It builds upon the bike and ped plan that was originally completed in 2013 and also updated recently. We recognize that Fairfielders feel strongly about having areas where they can walk and bike safely. And so this portion of the plan talks about those networks and whether there are things that we can do within our zoning regulations to help facilitate better developments within the areas that we regulate. And so that's largely what this section speaks to. In terms of a community where people come together, we based a lot of this section not to recreate the wheel, but to build upon the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that was recently completed and had very large public attendance. And so we really mirror a lot of what they focused on within that plan. And then lastly, you know, one of the things that we prioritize with folks who come to talk about the POCD and also different departments is the POCD is an opportunity to unlock future funding, both in terms of state funding, federal funding. And so we really do want to include in the plan future planning projects, specific projects where brownfields funds may be required, transportation projects. So that's the other thing that we try to focus on within the POCD. And then that's all I have.
Thanks, Emily.
That's me attached to the thing.
Thank you. I'm pleased to have such a person on our team. So I'm not gonna get into the detail that we just talked about. I just some overall themes that I touch on. Some we've already had some feedback on, and I just wanted to make sure that I put these remarks out there that we can. So as stated in the opening paragraph of this draft, the POCD is originally really the articulation of priorities of public and private investment over the next 10 years or so. As Selectmen talked about, this has been a robust public engagement effort. I will not go through the timeline as I appreciate you doing so. But as Emily describes, this work supports previous work of a lot of other agencies within the town. Just as they went through. We did have on April 20th of this year, an open house in which we made a presentation and then presentations, one for each of these chapters that presented some of the goals and strategies that we were putting forth and asked attendees to actually vote. They had little stickers they could put things on, whether they supported or didn't support these proposed recommendations. And by and large, we had pretty good support for those that gave us the confidence to go forward with actually fleshing out these recommendations into an actual plan. The plan represents targeted strategies to increase housing opportunities, including further advancing the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Plan, as well as targeted economic development opportunities that we've been talking about now for a while, near transit in our downtown. I think it's important to emphasize that this plan, in our view, does not propose wholesale change throughout our town. The draft specifically recognizes that. On page 41, which is the introduction to the sustainability section, I'll just quote this one note, and Emily touched on it. Many Fairfielders strongly connect to the quality of the town with the quality of its residential communities. As such, there is little opportunity or appetite to grow its economy through expansion of its commercial and industrial areas. Thus, economic growth by adaptability. So I think that's the statement. What we're talking about here are really goals and strategies that complement the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years with respect to transit-oriented development, which is in essence targeting development in appropriate, predominantly commercial locations while maintaining the underlying characteristics of our legacy neighborhoods. That's kind of the needle we're trying to thread there, trying to offset or understanding the need and the desire to grow the grand list to offset taxes, while at the same time preserving all those characteristics that everybody loves about the town. So the introduction and the plan foundation chapter describe in more detail the journey we've been on, and I think each section kind of sets the tone and the underpinnings for each of the goals and policies. I will say this, that the section 8-23 of the Connecticut General Statutes does outline the requirements for POC adoption by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We are required to provide you a draft, which we have obviously done, 65 days prior to any public hearing that the commission may hold on adoption. That referral is advisory. You are not obligated to render a report to the commission. We certainly hope that you would be supportive of the plan, but should you render a report that does not endorse any particular section, that would trigger a requirement of the TPZ to adopt that by a 2/3 vote rather than a simple majority. Having said that, this is a work in progress. We are in the public feedback stage. We did a lot of public engagement to get us to this point. We actually now have a draft that's been out there for distribution. We've been aiming at a potential October public hearing. However, that timing will be up to the Planning and Zoning Commission once they've had a chance to have targeted discussion on the draft as we've put it together over the next several meetings. So I will leave it there. Emmeline and I are certainly available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. I know you both put a lot of time and effort into it, as did a lot of people in the community. I'll open it up. Is there any questions?
Sure. Thank you, both to you and Emmeline. And I appreciate that there has been significant public engagement to get to this point. But at this point, since I'm not prepared to render a judgment, I'm happy to take in the information. But I guess my questions and my comments are more cautionary, and I really take to heart, we were all copied on an email from Bud Morton, who asked, I think, really salient questions that I hope the TPC Commission will address. Particularly sort of utmost importance to me is it a thoughtful plan for our town? You know, he asked the question in that email, or is this really about developers and building? And I don't have an opinion on it. I hope it's something that the TPC Commission will address. Can you answer a couple questions though with just the sort of nuts and bolts of this? Who wrote this plan?
This plan, we have engaged the services of a consultant, FHI Studios out of Hartford. We have been collaborating with them on a biweekly basis since March of last year. So there's been a lot of collective effort. The actual document itself was put together by FHI Studios.
Okay, and I understand that the commission is still in the process of submitting questions and that they have a meeting tomorrow to address it. And so for me, I'm sort of more interested in reading the plan once TPZ has sort of had a chance. I saw the number that again stuck out for me was 2017. So ostensibly the town has until 2027. Is that correct?
But let me back up a minute in responding to that before, if I can. We were charged, the Planning and Zoning Commission initiated this effort in 2018, shortly after the adoption of the 2017 update, recognizing that at that time that was an update of the 2000 plan that brought in, because the regional plan had just been adopted, it was an opportunity to freshen up certain elements of the plan, including the inclusion of the bike ped stuff, which was important to do. But that reset the clock, you're correct, at 2017. Our charge from the commission at that point is, okay, let's now move forward and do an overall plan, which we've begun to do. And you may recall that when at this board and others, we were fortunate to be considered in the ARPA plan for funding to help us move this forward. Also included a piece of funding to reorganize and modernize our zoning regulations, because that hasn't been done in a very long time. And so that first phase of the zoning regulation reorganization has kind of taken place, and the commission has presented with a draft of that as well. That doesn't change really any of the underlying regulations, but it kind of reorganizes them in a best practice. In the next phase, after adoption of the plan, is then consideration of more substantive changes to the regulations that could potentially start to implement some of these regulations. Now, going back, you are correct. There's been a lot of public engagement to get us to this point, and I agree. We haven't had the substantive discussions yet with the commission on what they may agree on, what they may not agree on. So, like I said, this is a work in progress, and we don't expect you to take action today. That's a fair comment, but we did need to start that clock going by initially offering you the draft as it stands. So I expect there will be more modification to this as we move forward.
And could you just expand on that then? Why the need to sort of start the clock, if you will, when we have several more years to it? I would hate, because the years that you've spent on public engagement is very different than, again, the public engagement on the document itself. And I would just hate to rush that process, because we have seen historically, this is a community that wants to be engaged and cares deeply. So if you're looking at a 65-day out or October, like that feels to me like, and again, we leave this to the TPZ, but it feels like a very rushed clock, given the nature of everything that's in here.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is I agree that the timing of how we proceed from here rests with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We will report to them on how they feel comfortable moving forward. We do have another piece to this funding that's somewhat reliant on the next piece, which is trying to implement whatever there's consensus on with respect to recommendations. But I would respectfully suggest that a 4-year time frame to get this document, I think, in the result of this document is reflective of all the input we've had thus far. And I don't expect that there would be unanimous consent when we release a document such as this, that everyone's going to say, yay, this is great. I understand the reality of public planning work. There's going to be pushback on some elements. There's going to be acceptance of others. That's to be expected. We haven't had the opportunity to have those substantive dialogue with the commission yet. So it will solely be up to them as to the timing of adoption.
Okay, but respectfully, like the 4 years to get to this point is not the same. And I just want to state that emphatically. It's not the same as them having 4 years or months, if you will, because 4 years is extreme. I hear what you're saying. I'm just pushing back on it because I think that the commission is deserves, and the community deserves, the time and the thoughtful discussion to really marinate on this document, which they haven't authored and they haven't sort of had a chance to put their input into it. So, you know, we don't have to go too much back and forth on that. I'm just encouraging the TPZ to consider my comments here.
Solely in their hands,
Yeah.
and we report to them.
Yeah, and I guess I would also encourage, for the record, I would encourage the zoning committee to really take to heart what Bud Morton asked in his email, because I think he's asking really good questions about where it's sort of like the cost risk reward or sort of benefits versus not benefits for adopting some of these, and to really have fulsome discussion around, if we don't do this, what's the benefit? I think that we have to look at both sides of what's being presented here as options. So I hope they'll take the time, at least more time than given what's afforded to them. Tom, you know, I'll defer to you for additional questions so I can, you know, hear from you, and maybe you'll have additional questions, but.
So I would just comment, yeah, go ahead.
We haven't put any constraint timeframe on this at all.
Yeah. I understand that.
So it's gonna
Of course.
proceed as it proceeds. So there's no deadline. That's solely gonna be how the process goes from here.
Of course, I understand that. It's just, you know, you've presented it to us and it sort of starts a process and people thinking about it. So it's not accusatory by any nature. It's more like cautionary. I would urge the zoning commission to really take the time, because we've seen historically, like with the charter review, that the community really does want to be engaged, and to be successful in adopting the plan. I feel like we should learn from that historically and really take the time that we have so that the community can be engaged. So eventually it is adopted and that there's sort of broad support for it.
Or been here.
Yeah.
So I would just chime in before I reopen it back up that, I would encourage Mr. Morton to attend, or he should have attended a lot of these meetings. There were many. And I think what Jim was trying to convey was that this document is based on that community input, emails, focus groups, master plan, park and rec, like a lot of community engagement from stakeholders, all the planning and zoning members, the prior planning and zoning members and the current were engaged in these meetings, as well as the Affordable Housing Committee, the senior advocates. I mean, a lot of different groups. So it wasn't as if some consultant out of the blue just put together this plan without community input. There was significant. And I know maybe you didn't, I don't think you did go to any of these meetings, but I did. And there was significant input from the public, and it was good. I thought it was very helpful, but I just, I encourage anybody who, writes an email with a lot of ideas who didn't attend any meetings, I remembered, just being on other boards over my course of my public service career, and that, it's easy to kind of throw stones at things when you haven't been engaged in the process. So I would encourage anyone who truly wants to be engaged in a process to attend the meetings in person, have their input provided, have feedback, engage with, the members, go to the planning and zoning when they're discussing it, because ultimately it is their document. They have the sole authority over voting on it. And I would encourage anyone who truly cares about it to go to those meetings, listen to the members' questions and their feedback and information, and then have public input, because there will be, correct?
Absolutely. That's what we are engaging with now, is we're trying to the broadest net to get the most feedback. So yeah, we expect there to be.
Okay.
May I respond to what the first selectwoman just said, please?
Can we just because I just want to say that we do have other items, and I have a hard stop at 5:40 because I have another meeting at 6. So I want to make sure we get to everything on our agenda. This is not a voting item.
The only thing is, I think, right, if we were to turn down some aspect of the plan, doesn't that change the hurdle for the TPZ to actually approve the plan?
It could, if this board chooses to make a report that does not endorse a particular section of the plan, for example, then yes, that adoption of that would trigger.
But that would require, though,
5 votes versus 4 votes.
that would require the board to have actually read through the report and then provide substantive feedback after reading it.
Then let me,
Not at this meeting, but at a different meeting.
yeah, so that's fine. I understand that. Thank you for the clarification on that. First of all, thank you for all the hard work and effort. And I can imagine, like, looking at the reports that were done earlier by Park and Rec and by other areas, it was kind of like herding cats, right, in order to get this together. Second of all, I've gone on record many times of saying, quite frankly, the TP&Z Commission, in my opinion, is one of, if not the most valuable board in town, because they control our land usage, which is our only asset when it comes to generating revenue for this town, and in protecting the character and the qualities that make this town so attractive for people to live in. That being said, if this report were before me today for a vote, I could not endorse it. Okay, and I could not endorse it not because I don't agree with aspects of it, but because I don't understand exactly what it's telling me. It's a panoply of things as opposed to a concise message of what does this do for me in the next 10 years. Okay, there's no executive summary that says, hey, right now, 15% of the property in the town is commercial and 85% is residential. As a result of this plan, it could be that 70% is residential and 30% is commercial. There's no economic analysis here that tells me that if this plan were to go into effect, what is the impact to revenue and what is the impact to the expenses? Because I'm telling you what, having done this in 18 years in this town, people are very engaged and everybody has the thing they want, right? Where the rubber meets the road is, can you afford to pay for it? So for example, if we are increasing the density of the residencies in certain areas of this town by this, That's going to increase the need for services such as sewer, police, fire, education, traffic management, park and recreation. Who's going to pay for that? Because 10 years ago, when we were talking about the Metro Center and providing funding in that tri-party agreement, one of the biggest questions, complaints, concerns, particularly from the Board of Finance, but from others, were the fact that if you turned it into too much in terms of residency, the draw on public services was much greater than the revenue that was being generated. There's no economic details here. There's no, at least I can't find it, where it says, here's where your density is going to be across the town. This is what's going to do to the traffic to the town. This is what it's going to do to your price points. Are we going to need more firehouses? Are we going to need more schools? Which, by the way, there's no land for. Are we going to need more police? Which, by the way, they're already saying they do need more police. So I couldn't support the plan only because it doesn't tell me where we're going in a summarized way. All it does is say, this area is getting this area is getting this, we're gonna move this, and people are gonna take pot shots on it. It's a panoply for developers, it's not aggressive enough, right? I don't know. Because it's not summarized in a way that a businessman can look at it and says, in 10 years, what are we going to look like? And what's the revenue generating possibilities for the town? Don't tell me.
Let me respond to that in this way. There's a lot there, but would point to the 2019 TOD plan has an extensive economic analysis as part of that, which talked about
The DOT.
TOD, I'm sorry, yeah, transit development, that talks about
And who put that plan together?
that was a joint effort between the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Economic Development Commission, with a lot of public engagement. And obviously what was going on there was going back to 2005 or earlier, there was a lot of support to do a big commercial development in Metro Center. That's the
Correct.
place we're gonna, that's where we wanna grow the grand list, that's gonna have the least amount of impact on. And obviously things changed, that took more of a look of the realities of the housing or office market having crashed. What are the
Correct.
alternative scenarios? And there's a very detailed discussions that ensued there about 3 potential build-out scenarios that were vetted, and kind of the middle ground scenario was proposed. And there's a very detailed analysis in that plan that talks about tax revenue streams that flow.
Correct.
Bottom line is the consulting team and the economic, basically were opining that a large-scale residential development like we see at Alto and Trademark behave economically much like a commercial office building. And so there is,
What does that mean?
well, in terms of the tax generation it creates
Sure,
versus the offsets.
I disagree.
Well,
Because commercial development, you don't have kids.
well, we track the enrollment data from the Board of Ed annually. I don't.
Right, it's
have
down
it.
10% right now.
In because of a typical single-family house is gonna generate about 2/3 of a kid townwide.
Right.
In every single development we have of 10 or more housing units townwide, it's 0.15. We don't see it
0.15 what?
enrolled students.
For every 10 houses,
No, for every development,
right?
the 2,500 or so units that are in developments that have 10 or more units, 0.15 kids per. So
How is there 0.15 kid per year? There's 60,000 people in town, there's 9,000 students.
22,000 households. They have a whole formula they have.
basically 2/3 of the households in town.
So I'm gonna just, all right, let's just, hey, now listen, this is an overview of this POCD plan. I know it's the first time, probably you may have seen it or looked at it. Jim, can you remind the board when you first gave the POCD plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Oh, I want to say it was the draft when it was circulated, I think it was the 31st of July. But
So-
just in terms, I'm sorry,
I just want to make sure we have other items on our agenda, and I know this is a very interesting topic. We do not have a vote on it. What I would suggest is if members want to, really go through it and have a real interest in it, I would encourage, our board members to attend the planning and zoning meeting tomorrow, where I believe, are you discussing this tomorrow?
Well, that remains to be seen. We have asked the commissioners to give us
Feedback.
their initial feedback on, so we can have some targeted discussion on where we have agreement and where we have divergence, so we can concentrate on targeted discussion. We don't have all of that yet. It's on the agenda. It will be on every agenda going forward.
Because I think that will spur probably.
Deck for the the subsequent meeting is the 26th of this month. We're
Okay.
planning to do nothing else but talk about this.
Yeah.
What you just implied though, Madam First Selectwoman, is that there's, and I don't know that you know this, I'm just saying what was implied by that is my questions aren't answered by 100 and some odd page document, right? My questions are, what's our density gonna be afterwards? What's the proposed economic impact of the town? What's gonna be the commercial versus residential makeup of the town? Those are things that are not addressed in this document. Are they gonna be addressed at the meeting because they exist, but they're just not part of the document? I would assume if they existed in that format, they would be part of the document.
Well, I think what we're trying to emphasize in the document in our presentation is that the commercial to residential ratio, we are not proposing to change. The
It
area
sounds like residence is gonna go higher, right?
in very, very small, but that's not changing the amount of residential versus commercial footprint. Right now, only about 5% of our land is, I would call commercial industrial tax generating properties. We're not looking to move the needle on that. What we're seeing in the areas where we're getting development are redevelopment of historical industrial employment sites that are being now reused for something else. The economic benefit to that, the three largest residential developments we've had in recent years is 90 units at Anchorage on Umpqua, Trademark 1 and Trademark 2. All in, those three developments pay $2.25 million annually. That's more than GE paid.
Yeah. We lost GE, we lost more than that.
They pay two.
They paid over two.
That's what he's saying. They
They're not
collectively
more than
pay.
GE ever paid. They're the same as what GE paid if you add them together.
Okay, so let's move.
Again, the fact of the matter, the bottom line is we weren't expecting or asking you to endorse or not endorse this plan today. We're just kind of introducing it to you. I appreciate your feedback. We're gonna have more as we go forward.
No, and I do appreciate all the work and thought. I'm not trying to, yuck on anybody's yums. I'm just saying if this was before me as a business person to say, do you approve or not, or do you endorse or not endorse? I couldn't endorse it because it raised at an executive summary level. I don't know where it brings me. That's what I'm saying.
So let me bring this back for a minute. We're not voting to endorse it. I would like both members of the board to please take the time to, have you read the whole document?
I have.
Okay, so what I would encourage, is if you really have this firm interest I would sign on to these meetings and listen to the dialogue of these people who've been elected as our planning and zoning people, to ask their detailed questions, listen to them, hear it. I spend obviously a lot more time because this is, my time job, but I would encourage you to listen to what they have to say, their questions, submit questions even if you'd like, to them and ask them to ask them. I think that would be helpful. Listen, it's a planning document. It is tied to a lot of grant applications as well for the town. And there are some antiquated things we have in our old master plan that kind of, don't make sense. And then again, it's tied to grant applications, but in an interest of time, because we do have voting items that we have coming up, and I want to make sure we have enough time. And I'd be more than happy to have Jim come back another time and answer more questions. But really, I think that the elected board that is elected to do this work, to vote on this, who listen to planning and zoning applications every single, meeting that they attend, I would share any, top level discussion items with them And then, if you have follow-up things, because then maybe you'd feel more comfortable.
The grant application, part of this aspect, is one of the least significant to me. What's most significant to me is making sure that the plan is aligned economically, with the desires of the residents of the town. So if you get a group of residents together, they tell you they like their services, they're gonna want more pickleball courts, they're gonna want great schools, okay? But if you grow the residency too high and it doesn't outweigh the cost of providing their services, the services per resident are gonna suffer. We've gotta maintain that, and I don't know.
No, I 100% agree, Tom, and there's nobody who's been more of an advocate for that type of thing than me. But again, a lot of that's beyond our control and outside of the planning and development. It's 8-30G. Let's talk about the reality of the situation. So regardless of what document is designed and worked on, developers can move in and build whatever they want on any piece of land they want, as we currently have an 8-30G statute in the state of Connecticut. And so that, that's that. I mean, and they can put up, 50 units on every single small lot in this town if they wanted to, regardless of this document, and we couldn't do one damn thing about it. And that would result in over, more residents would need services. So, that's the truth.
So that's
Somebody
not,
could go
that's not
buy
trying
your
to-
house and
that's not
put
trying to say
20
that.
units on it.
That's not trying to say this document is irrelevant.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't stop overdevelopment. You can't, that is something that is generated by a statute that allows it. This is, this has got a lot of stuff involved in it. And I personally support the development of the brownfield sites. I think that they revitalize those areas. I mean, I think the Metro Center development's gonna revitalize a depressed, not tax-paying area, and that has been in the works for over 20 years, and is finally gonna move forward. But again, I wanna make sure we get to our voting items, so I'm happy to have Jim come back after the planning meeting.
A few more comments and questions, if I may.
Sure.
I would just say that this is the platform as a selectman, as the Board of Selectmen. This is the domain in which we can have these conversations. So while I think it's important to, if you aren't attending meetings, to be able to listen to them, for the record, I do know that Bud Morton, because I had asked this question if he had attended, and he has, as have I. I think asking questions in absence of being at a meeting doesn't dismiss or diminish the importance of those questions, and I think they deserve to be answered. I think the community is owed that. And I would just say, I don't always I think it's not fair to say that we have voting items. I think we should not be falling on that, because if we need to sit here for 5 hours and discuss something, that's what the public deserves. And I would also say that there's a real difference between gathering public input in the planning stage on one hand, and then on the other allowing, and this is more in response to what the first Selectwoman said earlier. So there's a difference between gathering public input at the planning stage versus sort of allowing the public to weigh in on things that are gonna be regulatory and changes. And so I think, again, my comments don't have to do with me having to sit in a TPZ meeting saying this. It's as a Board of Selectmen person around this table, encouraging them what they're elected to do, which is to be thoughtful, to take the time they need to, and this is not an indictment of what you're saying, Jim, because I know you support this and you're not saying otherwise. Collecting public data is not the same as the analytics, Tom, that I think you're asking for. And I just think that, again, why I think, Bud Morton's email, it's not about him showing up at a meeting and asking these questions. I think that they shouldn't be ignored and they should be asked, and they really are about analysis and numbers and allowing the TPZ to make the most informed decision that I know they'd want to make. So I don't really have much else to add on that front, except, I wish them good luck, but I too would not be able to support it as is, because I know TPZ hasn't, the consultant brought this document taking in public input, but TPZ really hasn't had a chance. I mean, just over a month to really look at it, but hasn't put their input in yet. And you know, at that point, I would love to have the document come back to us for discussion, because I'd like to be able to support it, but right now, I just don't think there's enough in it. For instance, I know education through the lifespan was taken out. It sort of exists in the current plan and it's not in this plan. So just one example of something that I hope will be discussed at that meeting tomorrow and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
For your attention.
Thank you very much. So, would you like to have another, maybe end of the month, or I don't know when, I actually have no idea when the TP&Z is gonna, what their discussion's gonna be like tomorrow, and then, Emmeline said there's another meeting, or Jim said another meeting at the 6, I think. I don't know what their timeline is. I don't know if they're gonna say they're gonna kick it down, or if they're, down the road, if they're gonna try to work on it. And I don't know, I mentioned something about public comment, so I don't know the feedback. So let's, I guess, let me look at them and see how they're going. And if they do decide to, try to do it, in October, you were saying?
That's from what.
Right, so.
I don't know what the zoning commission, because
Yeah,
they haven't had a chance.
I don't either, but if they're gonna try that, I would, more than happy to put it back on our agenda before they, if in fact are gonna vote in October, I'd be happy to.
And I know that they don't run the risk of that discretionary funding and the grants that you were talking about, and that they don't run the risk, my understanding, until it runs out in 2027. So it shouldn't impact that. So I would just say we have the time, let's take it. I'm a proponent of that. I would defer to the TPZ body itself to come back to tell us, not.
No, I absolutely think they should. So let me just see what they do, and if they do decide to try to vote on it in October, I will have Jim and Emmeline come back to talk with us and do an additional discussion. That's good for everybody.
It's just, it's too important a decision because it impacts the tax base for the town, not just for the next.
100%, I agree. Okay, item number 8. This is what we were, last meeting, and then there were some questions and stuff. So we postponed it to a date certain. Today is the date certain. So I'm gonna ask for a motion to hear, consider, and approve the Board of Selectmen compensation for the next term.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, very good. And I'm going to open it up. I know Jared is here to answer any questions. That there was a list of questions, I believe. Did you send answers to people before? Or?
Woman Lefkowitz asked some questions that were emailed to me and I responded to them.
Okay,
If you want, I can just open up and reiterate.
go through them
And I
and
can
we'll open it
Yeah,
up.
let's do
give
that.
you those answers and then see if you have anything else that
Thank you.
keep it really basic. One of the questions was about the first select woman and whether she received compensation for travel. The answer is yes. And the amount is $6,000. It's a stipend. Where does it come from? What account it comes from? It's called the travel and meetings account in the first select woman's budget. It does not come from the salary payroll line.
But it's a standard amount each month, $500, right?
Roughly, yes. Yeah, it's
132 every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
there you go. They don't line up exactly. Do the selectmen receive
Can we ask,
stipend?
sorry, point of information, can we ask questions as you're going through, because I do have a question about that, okay? Go ahead, because it'll fold into this next question.
Do the selectmen receive stipend? The answer is no. With the 2019 compensation committee, they ended that practice. And there was, what we could tell, You and Tom would probably know better looking at your, or whatever. We didn't see any stipend for either one of you guys during FY20.
No,
Or not.
So can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
Okay. Finish your thought, though. I don't mean to interrupt you. Or are you moving on to the next point?
No, I think so. I think those are some of the basic questions, just some of the basic questions.
So given that, and I will admit, I didn't dig up my pay stub because it was not easily accessible from 2019 until it went into effect for 2020. Ostensibly, that would free up $3,000. And you had alluded to this in your responses, that it would free up $3,000 the budget, taxpayer dollars, but it seems that that was absorbed into the first select woman sort of like T&E, but I don't know what line it's from. But so where did the money that was supposed to be for our stipends? It's not like it went back. We didn't negate it from the budget.
I'll answer it this way. The funding for that line item stayed basically the same. In previous years, it had been anywhere from 9,000 to 11,500. It remained at $10,000.
Right, but it was approved to be for stipends and then it changed, but there was no sort of discussion about that. So in essence, it should be listed, and this is why I'd asked you for the munis detail, just to understand, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but we talked a lot about during the credit card conversation about culture. And I think it sort of speaks to that because where did that 3,000 go exactly, I think is important for us to understand because we didn't vote on it as a specific thing. The last we knew it was for stipends and then now it's absorbed into like a T&E budget.
General funds.
In the travel and meetings line item stays in there. It has been spent every year.
What?
So the way I would answer that is that the $6,000 is for the travel stipend. That's the travel portion of the travel and meetings budget.
But I think you need to explain it better. So
Right, so
my stipend and then, see, I think what happened here and what I sort of learned after our last meeting, because I didn't really understand it either. I knew I get a stipend and it's in my check. And I misunderstood when it was called like the travel line. It's different than meetings. But then I never knew there was a Board of Selectmen stipend. Like I didn't know that. When we talked about it at the last meeting, I was like, wasn't aware of that. So I guess the compensation committee, the last one 4 years ago, voted to eliminate this Board of Selectmen, select persons stipends. And that amount was how much?
Total.
For both people
select person.
per year. Okay, so I think what happened was, obviously, it wasn't communicated, and we actually went back, I just want to say, and looked for any shred of documents or information about this being communicated to the HR department after that meeting. And there's literally nothing. We even went all the way back to try to look at Kathleen Griffin's emails. She, I think we found something from Mike communicating it to her, but it was never communicated to the HR department. So I think what happened was there was no information given to them about this additional percentage in health insurance costs for the next first select person. But it was also never communicated that the Board of Selectmen stipend was eliminated. So what I think happened was it just kept going in the budget. So we were doing these other things and none of us recognized it. Now, the first year, I didn't have a CFO because he was terminated. So, and it was a pandemic and everything else, but no one was really paying attention to this, right? So it's just sitting in this fund where there's money that, the way Jared describes it to me. So for example, when there's a prep meeting, like when the staff has to stay here before they have to go to a budget meeting, or the staff has to stay here before they have to go to an RTM meeting, or the staff has to stay here and prep for a meeting. It just came out of that. So if they're buying a pizza or whatever it is, that kind of stuff. So am I describing this right?
In general, that's what it was for. So that would be the meetings portion of it was that it was that $4,000 in part was spent on
3,000.
deals related to meetings or
But so this is contradictory information. On the one hand, you're saying, you know, you didn't know that there were stipends and then you knew. I did some homework here, and Kiva Berry, who's in human resources, she had done the stipends in the former iteration, and so there was that sort of like through line. So on the one hand, there was information that there was an additional amount for that T&E budget, the 3,000. So you did ostensibly know about it. So I just think the financial control, I think it speaks to the larger issue of those financial controls that, you know, we just raised as concerns, that yes, it's $3,000 and it's a little bit here, and I just am concerned that, you know, we aren't able to, what we owe the residents is an ability to track that, which is why, again, I had asked for the munis detail on it, because I think that would sort of clearly spell out what those meetings were. You know, are we, you know, taco parties and pizza parties and all of that? I'm not saying there isn't rationale for it, but I just think, like, what are the checks and balances for each department head? Because now this is an additional $3,000 that's going to the first selectwoman's or first select person, you know, forget the specific office, but ostensibly going into that office without sort of a process. And that's just sort of what's concerning to me. So.
so the process that in place, so in the situation where there are purchases of meals, surrounding a meeting, which is part of our credit card and meal policy that allows for this to happen, that's what we follow. That's the process that we follow. And so there are constraints on what we can spend that money on, how much we can spend it on for each meal.
I'd love to.
It's
I think what she's asking is how did we, so I think what Nancy's asking is, there's a, all right, so
I
it's,
can restate it. So
but let me try to, for the public's edification, because I don't want people to think that there's this $3,000 sitting there and we're just using it for willy-nilly things. My understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, because I don't work in the finance department. If my department, if we're staying for a meeting, right, and we're gonna go, and we're here all day, and then we have to go to a budget meeting, but we have to prepare. And we're sitting in the conference room, we order a pizza. It's coming out, so it's a credit card, right? Am I describing this right?
so those are.
So it's a credit card. And then it gets paid by the finance department from that fund,
Account.
right? Or if there's a staff meeting, which we have, and we're eating from, where we're meeting from 11:30 to 1:30, we order, within the guidelines, which was the problem with the credit card before, because people weren't trained at, certain amount for a breakfast meeting, certain amount for a lunch meeting, certain amount for a dinner meeting. So I don't know, is that how this was working? It was like credit cards, say Jared was having a staff meeting in his finance department, or I was having a staff meeting, or whatever it is, right? Or we're preparing for a budget, and it's during a lunch or meal, it's during a meal time. And people don't want to leave for an hour to go get their lunch, which typical employees in town government leave for an hour, and some of us don't. We just stay here and work. So what I'm saying is that, like, would that credit card bill go to the finance, and they were paying it out of that?
We were paying it out of this account, out of the
Okay.
capital.
that's not what I'm asking. So let me clarify, because I'm not challenging the why. I'm not saying it's not good use. I'm not questioning the intent. I think it would be good for the public, or for us at least, because we are voting on it. It's our board to see the policy that it's based on. I'm really talking about the how, the process. And for me, what's confusing, and I leave it, to perhaps the Board of Finance and the other powers that be, I'm raising the question that here is $3,000, which may seem insignificant in number, but it's really, to me, about the process, how $3,000 that was supposed to go for stipends based on what was recommended and then not, was somehow just sort of transferred without discussion, without oversight. And so that's my concern and question.
I think there was no transfer. The money was in the travel and meeting budget, and it remained in the travel and meeting.
That's right. What happened was after the original budget, in whatever year it was done, the organization, that subcommittee got together and they said, we're gonna get the stipend. So what didn't happen, so I'll use the example, $10,000. $10,000 was in the meeting budget, right? Of that $10,000 in prior year, $3,000, who knows if the former selectman was there or not? $3,000 was part of that $10,000, right? The $3,000 went away, but yet the budget was never adjusted to reflect that the $3,000 went away. So the budget basically stayed at $10,000, which theoretically it should have been lowered to $7,000. That's it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And why? How did that not happen?
Yeah.
So again, not perhaps, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah.
I guess that's a question for the board approved it last 4 years. Every board approved the budget.
Right, so every board, I mean, where our board looked at it.
Right.
Because it was a 0% increase, because it was 10,000 a year
Right.
before, 10,000 this year.
See why I'm not, again, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm pointing out that it's a flawed process, because yes, every board approved it, but we didn't understand that sort of like nuance of like, oh, well, we took it away, so.
Agreed, and I think
be some sort of
I think the
policy.
flaw was that that the vote that took place at this, by the former Board of Selectmen was never communicated to the appropriate departments to implement the information on the vote.
And that's where I sort of get stuck, because this is the sticky wicket, because somehow someone knew to change our pay. So someone knew, and I guess it speaks again to the where the controls need to be, need to look at that, because our payroll changed.
Right.
But it didn't transfer over. So I'm just pointing that out. I don't have a problem with the compensation package. Again, I just think that some of the findings from it, health insurance, I did have a question about that, if I could go on.
I just want to quickly just say, listen, I'm happy to talk about this till the cows come home at another meeting. It's just that I'm boxed in, and so is Jared. We have another meeting that I didn't know when we scheduled this. I'm happy to talk about this at the next meeting or any other meeting. But we do have to break at 5:40. So, and I have tax collector, and I also have to, I asked Mr. Bremer to give us a Penfield update, because Jennifer said we have no business really coming before us on the 18th, so there's no reason to have a meeting. And I promised a Penfield update every month, so I wanted him to be able to give that to you, so we didn't miss our September Penfield update. So I just wanted to give you that, and I was gonna bring it up under new business, so I apologize.
Okay, so real quick, 'cause my questions then sort of dovetail on this, and it speaks to sort of like policy and again, department budget and process, which I can bring under new business. But the insurance question that I have is, do all the department heads pay percentages of like a blended amount? Because it looks like when I was reading quickly through the email you sent through about what first selectwoman has to repay and what she paid, and it would be good to know what the annual cost to the town is based on like single versus employee plus one and family, and is the percentage based on a blended amount, or is it per plan?
It's dependent on what each contract is. It's not gonna be done by department.
Okay.
Contract.
Okay,
Or the department heads done, Jared.
Department heads are 18%, correct?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
but and is that based on a sort of like blended amount or their particular, okay. And again, this is a new business question, but maybe I'll ask it in the context of compensation. It would just be good to get an update, because I know that your chief of staff was out on maternity leave, and Emma Iacono came in and filled in, and I just have a question around what the current state is. And
Well, actually, that's not accurate. Pam Iacono, there is a part-time position in my office that I had a part-time person who left for a full-time position, which was empty for a period of time. During that period of time, Pam came in and we had another part-time person. So Pam was there because we had a buildup of part-time money from the part-time person who left. We had a part-time person. Pam came in while Jackie was gone. The other part-time person vacated the position. Pam is in the part-time position that has always been in the office.
Okay, so budgeted in, under your office?
Yes.
And so current status of that is that Ms. Iacona is filling that sort of part-time
That part-time
position.
position.
Okay,
I just want to clarify one thing. Technically, it's budgeted under the administrative services line item where it has always
Where
been.
it's always been.
Part-time position has always been.
Does the rate of pay change?
No. I would have to check. The position and the placement of the position where it's paid out of, that has not changed. I don't know whether or not that position, the pay of the position has changed.
Right, because I'm only asking, I had no idea.
So can I just, wait a minute, I want to just circle back and we could discuss this again. Yes, Pam came in when Jackie was out, but again, this is not the item. We are breaking at 5:40. I have a Penfield update and I want to make sure you get this Penfield update. So right now on the table,
no,
is the compensation committee recommendation by the compensation committee.
Just for transparency, what was it, because I think one of the other questions was asked was, and this is just, I don't think, Mrs. Kupchak, you did absolutely nothing wrong on this, because they should have had your pay approval.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not good.
What was the amount of that over the course of 3 years?
The difference.
The difference, and how does that, what's happening with that?
It was $3,518.58.
Okay,
And as of this week, it will all be reimbursed.
I have paid it back.
all right.
I've had it.
I just want the public to know that.
Yes, I want it, me too, because I don't want anybody to think, listen, I was as surprised as anybody, by all this and, quite frankly, embarrassed that this happened. And so, listen, I don't think anybody in any job finding out that they didn't have the right, withdrawal coming out of their pay and get hit with, this thing, and most people would be, but I made sure that we paid it back and it's paid back and I am paying the correct percentage as outlined in the compensation committee 4 years ago. I'm paying that right now.
and I want to say thank you for that and for the transparency. And I would point out, $3,000 is a nugget, so, a
Yes.
big nugget. And I would say that, by the same token, that $3,000 that we're talking about with the stipends, it's taxpayer money. So that's why all of this is important. And I wouldn't want us to diminish, oh, it's only this amount or it's only this, because
I think it is.
it's on perspective. So I just think
No,
it's.
I don't think anybody here or in my administration is or minimizing $3,000 or $1,000 or anything. Just trying to explain it the way that it is. And it's unfortunate, it wasn't, communicated correctly and it wasn't handled correctly. We've been digging out a lot of problems here for the last 4 years and, it's like fixing something and I'm glad it's fixed. And we're happy again. But I would like to, we have the item on the, table and seconded to approve
Yeah, I'm ready to vote.
the compensation committee's recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously, and thank you so much. And again, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to discuss it at the next meeting under any business if you'd like. Okay, tax collector, can I get a motion to consider and act upon the tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount of $20,938.72?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Any from the public? Back to the board, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. And I appreciate you allowing us to have the Penfield update here, because I felt bad because when Jennifer told me this morning that she didn't think we'd had enough business for the 18th, I didn't want us to go without an opportunity to have because that's what I promised to the board select, so.
You felt bad. Imagine how Tom felt.
Well, you know what, Mr. Flynn, that's very funny. Cause I was like, hey, you're not going home, Bremer. You have to give an update.
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief and to the point. Penfield continues to move forward. We do have builder's risk insurance, I'm very happy to say. It's fortunately much more expensive than the last time we got builder's risk insurance, but as I think you have realized, that's not surprising. Where are
When
we
you
at?
say how much more?
Double.
And how's that impacting the budget?
Well, I don't have an answer for that yet because I'm still waiting for the bids to come in. I believe I'm still gonna be under budget, but you know what? I have the bids in about 3 weeks. I'll give you a much better sense of what is reality in terms of the estimate as opposed to reality.
You mean the overall bids for all of the buildings?
Yes, yes. Let me talk about the bid process right now. We had a public meeting, a lot of people showed up for it, down at Penfield. They're supposed to be in on the 14th of this month. There's a couple of other municipal projects that are ongoing, so they wanted another week, which we granted. So I'm hoping, I know that by the end of this month, I'm gonna have all the bids in. We're gonna have a very good sense of what reality is. And then I'll be able to answer your question, how's the budget going, in terms of the insurance? I will say that, we did budget slightly less in the budget because we just didn't think it would be this high, but it is what it is, so we'll work with it. Just see, if you were to go down to Penfield right now, let me talk a little bit about what's happening as we speak. As we speak, there's a dumpster in front of it. We've taken a bunch of stuff out of the building. Over the next 2 weeks, we're gonna shut it down. We're taking out the water, the electricity, all that kind of stuff. The plan, as I mentioned earlier, the last update is ongoing in the sense of what we want to do is we want to get rid of the hot spots. We want to remediate as much as we can, not really under the building, but around the building, the worst spots. So that, as I said earlier, at the previous update, we don't want construction guys walking in there with hazmat suits on and stuff like that. So we're gonna get rid of all the hot spots first, really before the Penfield construction begins. And the hotspots I'm talking about, that's one of the 40 sites. We've always had Penfield as one of the sites. We've always been thinking along these terms. But now that's what we're doing. We're gonna clean up those hotspots. We're gonna get rid of those. When is that gonna happen? I'm gonna guesstimate the first week of October. We're gonna go in. It doesn't take that long. We're gonna have a fence put up around it beforehand. We're gonna be doing air monitoring the whole time. So we've done this now 40 times, so we pretty much have it down as to what we need to do and what's the process. That's right. So I think by the end of this month, we should have a fence up. Fence takes almost a week to construct. And I'm hoping certainly in the first week of October, remediation will begin. I expect that to be done pretty quick. Then the real heavy duty construction and excuse me.
Sorry.
The Penfield process will begin in earnest thereafter. So that's really where we are. And as I said, I think in the next month's update, I'll have a lot more numbers. I'll have bids. As we award contracts and stuff like that, we'll be putting things out for the public. So they'll see who we awarded it to. They'll see the numbers. They'll see all that stuff, just so everybody knows what's going on.
And can you speak for the public, perhaps, how that process is gonna work? Like, will we get to weigh in on any of the bids or what sort of?
Well, what we're doing with the bids, the public will not weigh in on any of the bids. The public will have.
Contracts.
When we talk about contracts, of course, when we enter a contract, you will have the ability to sign off on the contract. We'll have Mr. Baldwin go through all the contracts beforehand. The way it's gonna work is we already have a construction manager that's already been approved by this body. And so what we're moving forward to is as the bids come in, the town and the construction manager will be meeting with the subcontractors. We'll go through the scope review. We'll pick the right people. All of those subcontracts will be folded into the overall contract between us and the construction manager when the final contract.
Yeah.
And that I'll be bringing before you. And you will know the numbers. You will say, okay, Joe's plumbing is gonna be, whatever. And then you'll have an opportunity to weigh in at that time.
So no contract, as you're laying out, will happen sort of in an emergency basis, like it'll be, the Board of Selectmen will get to.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely correct. Yep, there should not be any emergencies when we talk about contracts.
We have to follow the rules.
Sorry?
Or we have to follow the RFB and, I mean, we have to follow.
Everything is done through RFP through the town. And so the town and the construction manager will be sitting, doing all the scope reviews on all the different contracts with all the different subcontractors. And the construction manager will not be able to make the decision without our input, because we are obviously the owners and we're very involved in the decisions of who is doing what and when they do it and all that stuff.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For the update.
Can I just,
And as always, I mean, you can always, with
Email me
questions,
anytime.
obviously separately, because that would be a violation, for me or Tom or.
Well, we can, just to be clear, I think we're allowed to email together. We just can't, you just can't respond, reply all. But it's
but
fair
it
for
doesn't-
visibility to just see that.
Yeah, but
the questions were asked.
the other person doesn't get the answer, so.
Or you can answer it separately, but I just think for any questions, that's what I tend to do. I put Tom on it, understanding for visibility, understanding that the response will come
Appreciate that.
that way. So we understand that, at least.
Just don't want us to violate anything.
Agree.
You have something quick?
I do really quick. I just want to say with regards to 9/11, I've often talked about my faith being something that guides me. Tikkun Olam is a tenet of Judaism, and I'm sorry my back is to everybody. It seems to be that Tom has more of the face for television than I do. But Tikkun Olam is repair of the world, and one way we do that is by remembering. And so I just wanted to acknowledge out loud the victims and the families of 9/11, and the ripple is still effect. I was in Lower Manhattan. I lost some people, but we think about them collectively today and every day. And I think about the Coleman family. And I just wanted to send anyone that has been impacted or was there, just my thoughts are, of course, with you. And in this moment of remembering, I hope that it just adds to a little bit of that repair. So, thank you.
Nice, thank you.
Nice.
Okay, can't believe we did this on time.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion, Tom Flynn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for helping out with the time. I appreciate that.
Right.